Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Show to View with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Australia, the show of White Lyan, Dandelyan, Green Glass, and Future Fest of South by Southwest 2016. This wonderful guest this session is Iain Griffiths of White Lyan, Dandelyan, and so much more in London. We have a great chat about his doings in South by Southwest 2016, the Future Fest, making a couple cocktails. If I recall, there was a martini infused with mushrooms, which gives you this wonderful, rich, umami note. Something really perplexing about Iain is not that he's Australian. That's not so odd. It's not that he works at two of the best bars in the world, White Lyan of which is my personal favorite, but he has, at such a young age, still not 30 years old. He has such amazing grasp of flavor, a grasp of process, and a grasp of business. So please pardon my allergies during this chat. Somehow I was heavily afflicted by something in the air that night. Sorry, Mr. Phil Collins, but it was a great chat nonetheless. It was great to catch up with Iain, and I hope you guys enjoy this chat with Iain Griffiths of White Lyan and Dandelyan.
Who left you that note about last night? That is amazing.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite notes, man. Because that's why I know it's a great relationship, because she'll come out and say like, "Man, I was really shitty."
That is the best note ever. We always do that at White Lyan because we drink a shitload of White Lyan.
Yeah.
And it's like, we'll literally, like, I mean, some nights, like, everybody's done a bottle of tequila by the end of the night, kind of thing. And, like, wake up the next day and it's like, so, about last night? And just kind of like, is everyone alive? Is everyone okay?
Yeah.
Because one time we had this horrible situation where David Piper, the international Hendrix ambassador, and Joshua Fontaine, who owns Candelaria in Paris, they DJ'd like our anti-Valentine's Day night at White Lyan, got a late license, invited all the industry down. Sometime in that previous 24 hours, some kind of nasty stomach bug was brewing in the White Lyan ranks. So between so between everybody getting obliterated drunk after shift, and then this stomach bug hitting everybody, we couldn't open White Lyan the next day. We had nobody was able-bodied to be able to. It's the only time we've ever had to close White Lyan, other than we close every year at Christmas. We quite literally, we had to shut. We just had to, like, we couldn't even, no one could even get their ass to the bar to put a note on the door.
No one could probably get out of bed even, right?
That's it. So we quite literally, it's the only time that we've ever had to do it, but White Lyan had to close for the night.
That's insane.
Joshua Fontaine is still, like, disturbingly proud of that fact. He's like, I shut down fucking White Lyan. And then it's like, shut up, you did not shut down White Lyan.
Do you suspect he was, what is it, patient zero?
No. Joshua's a really good friend. I got a lot of love for that guy. But,
well, you know, it just goes to show you that we feel like we're impervious to pain, but we're susceptible.
We're not. Like, we're
talking about tequila too. You know?
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I drink a lot of tequila.
Yeah,
it's like it would be my go-to spirit, definitely. Mm-hmm. But when I was working at White Lyan, we call them retros in the UK, essentially like buybacks.
Okay.
Like, we had a really good buyback going on with tequila, because we make everything ourselves except for tequila, and we use Tapatio for that.
Okay.
Tapatio were giving us a good deal on it all, and I stopped working at White Lyan so much and moved over to Dandelyan because just within the business, my attention was needed there more so.
Right.
And the Tapatio ambassador distributor kind of contacted me to be like, you're not working at White Lyan as much at the moment, are you? And I'm like, no. He's like,
what?
I noticed sales are down significantly. And I'm like, yeah, sorry about that, John. I've got to go over to Dandelion. He's like, and like, Dandelion's more corporate, can't drink on shift there as much, blah, blah, blah. And and I was like, yeah, I'm sorry about that, man. He's like, it's all good. I just like looked at the monthly sales and wasn't sure if you guys had like started pouring somebody else or something.
It's like if Tober like somehow went on a sabbatical. Let's say he wants to go follow the dead or something, fish, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole industry for warm gin shots just goes.
Tober has championed warm gin shots over here.
I guess, but they were. Warm gin shots was a thing. It was a thing for centuries, probably.
Right?
But that's his hashtag. I'll give him the hashtag.
Okay, fair enough then. Because we in the UK, particularly in Scotland, it's a game called Gin Face.
I have actually heard of this game.
Yeah. So this was born, I don't want to say who or where it was born out of, but I discovered it in Scotland. And I know a lot of people attribute the Scottish even bringing it down to London.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so essentially you get a bottle of gin and you drink from your bottle of gin.
There you go. All right, good.
Simple.
Good story. You know,
however,
oh, shit, okay.
If you pull a face, you drink again.
If you pull a face?
So if you make a gin face.
Like a cringe?
Yeah, you cringe, you like, anything happens, like that face kind of contorts in any manner. Gin face, go again.
Oh, I see. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
And then obviously some people can't handle it, so they're just going to wind up double slugging from the bottle every single time.
Right.
And so, I mean, we played this on a train one time, and 8 of us put away a good couple of bottles of gin on this train.
Lord.
Yeah.
So does it get easier? Because
no,
it doesn't.
No.
It gets harder.
It gets harder because you get yeah. It's like it's a horrible drinking game.
That's like a feats of strength. That's not even like a game necessarily.
I mean, the UK don't really do drinking games per se, quite like the Americans do. So even this as a drinking game is really just an excuse to get obliterated. And like the penalty is more alcohol when you obviously can't even handle those initial amounts of alcohol anyway.
So more makes sense.
Exactly right.
Makes perfect sense.
It's like it's one of these ones where it's like nobody wins in this game, and yet gin face is still most definitely a thing.
I like that. There should be a Malort face then too. Because that one, I can't. I flinch.
I've only smelt this. I just turned around and I was like, I'm not doing that. We're talking about the Chicago spirit. Yeah. So when I was there with Sharon Bronstein from 86 Go showing me around, she was like, oh, and you kind of need to try this. And I was like, there's hesitation in your face. I don't like that. And she's like, it's unique.
It's interesting.
Like, yeah. And then I was in Best Intentions, really cool dive bar in Chicago. And they turned around and they were like, "Oh, have you tried this yet?" And they put it in front of me, and I like didn't pour anyone else shots, just put it in front of me.
Yeah.
I smelled it just around. I'm like, I'm not drinking that.
Yeah.
And they were just like, "What?" I'm like, I'm not being a snob. I'm not being a pussy. I'm just genuinely not putting that into my body. Like, I don't really know what else to tell you right now.
You don't have to eat blood sausage to know you don't want it.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. It was just, I still don't even know what it is necessarily.
Think of it as like an aquavit that is just a little more sludgy. Like Jaeger and aquavit.
Yeah, right.
See, that doesn't sound appealing to me.
No, not at all. But I mean, the first time I had Fernet, it was sold to me as Jägermeister on steroids.
Fair.
Fair, indeed. Yeah, but
a little more nuanced, I think.
Yeah, less sugar and blah 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 and all of that. But I mean, it was sold to me like that, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this kind of thing. So I think it's just certain people for certain spirits.
It is, and man, Malort. Oh god, there's a whole nother interview or podcast that happened just about that thing, and like people arguing back and forth about it. You know.
Yeah, and like different parts of Chicago apparently make it differently as well. Yeah.
Like, that's so strange.
I don't know. Like I was just kind of because they were like, oh yeah, no, they make it better over there, and I'm like,
what's better? So better or worse?
Yeah. It's like the best kind of bad, right? I was just like, okay, fair enough then. I'm just not going to touch it. Like, I'm good.
It's a good, at least a part of the narrative there, though, in Chicago. You know, the drinking culture.
I was in Russia, and they serve. I'm going to pronounce this horribly, but pulka is kind of basically what it is, and essentially, like the rest of the world thinks Russians are just crazy about vodka, but their local spirit is pulka, PULKA. QAR, I think it was, something like that on the bottle.
Okay.
And essentially, it is like neutral grain spirit, very roughly made. And then when they infuse different flavors into it, so I tried 9 different pool cars at this one dinner.
Okay.
Before dessert arrived, we did 14 shots.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, the Russian reputation for drinking definitely held up at that dinner.
Itself,
yeah. But essentially, when they infuse it, what they do is say there was one that was garlic and black pepper.
Okay.
So they get the vat of neutral grain spirit, they throw a whole bunch of garlic and black pepper in there, and then they just light the fucking thing on fire.
What? Why?
Because all the flavoring and all the spices float right at the top where the heat is as well. So it's like a really crude form of rapid heat extraction.
No shit.
Plus combined with the fact that it's already probably 60% on those crazy motherfuckers. Yeah. So they need to burn some alcohol off it. So they burn alcohol off at the same time as they infuse via this like surface level infusion. It is not good. It is not good.
And
it tastes horrible.
Like burning.
Yeah, it tastes horrible. It's like, and they were like, oh, and this is like the original, no flavor in there or anything like that. And it's like burnt rubber and you make, and it's just like, yeah.
It's like Iraq. I feel like that about some of those.
Yeah, but we had to try, of course. We could not be rude. We had to try all 9 flavors that they sat down at the table. And this is before mains arrived. By dessert, we'd done 14 shots. We did 9 shots before mains, and then another 5 shots through mains. And
So it's incredible. And so this is the thing, man. You know, we were in Lydia and I were in London, and Jay being a matchmaker. You know, it's like go see White Lyan and stuff, which was one of the greatest experiences of my culinary life. Thank you for that,
man. Thank you.
Oh sure. Yeah. No, you guys are. It's insane. We'll talk about that more, but. You're a worldly dude, you know?
I get to travel a lot. I'm really, really lucky for it.
It's pretty good. But you started out I'm trying to remember if it was Brisbane or Melbourne.
Brisbane.
Okay,
so I actually grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. So I had a proper farm boy upbringing until I was 15, like chasing sheep, baling hay, like in the middle of Australia.
Really?
Yeah. Like my mother used to call it God's own country because she said he was the only prick dumb enough to live there. Not a very religious woman, but it's kind of...
It's brilliant, though.
Yeah, but yeah, I grew up there until I was 15 and then moved to Brisbane and started bartending when I was 18.
So what does that... Did that give you... put it this way, a couple of the people that I talked to that are in the industry are very academic about it, very intelligent.
Right.
And they understand things like at a molecular level, they understand process. Were you probably literally getting your hands dirty when you were farming, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you guys grow anything out there?
No, we were mostly cattle. We were mostly cattle and sheep. And then we had like a smaller hobby farm. And then Dad was the rural lands protection officer. So he went around and made sure all the other farmers were doing the right practices in terms of pesticides and blah, blah, blah.
Really? Okay.
And then as a result of that, he would go and help out his friends on their larger farms on the weekends.
Yeah.
And whatever Dad did, we did. So, but then it was like, I'm one of 7 kids. And like...
were you falling like right in the middle?
I'm the 5th. I'm the 5th. Yeah.
They just forget after the 3rd.
Yeah.
I can compare better, best, worst, but I can't go to 5 kids. I don't even have a scale for that.
I'm the 5th out of 7, and it was a proper like farm upbringing. Like go to school, come home from school, cart wood on the weekends, and like camping and fishing, and then like chasing sheep, and like it was a legit farm boy upbringing. And then play rugby was the other thing.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Is that pretty common though?
Yeah, definitely. Like rugby's the big Australian kind of rural sport. Kind of thing. So rugby, and we have our own version. Well, they played in a little bit over here, rugby league, which is an adapted version of it. But I played union for 12 years. Wow. I started when I was 6. I remember my first game. Shit. Yeah, like I was 6 years old. It was like run down, get on the paddock, and played right through until I started bartending, which is probably not exactly a coincidence that the moment I discovered alcohol, I stopped exercising so regularly.
It's a hard road to balance.
Yeah, exactly. So,
so you get into bartending, which I can imagine is probably out of necessity, but did you have an interest in food and flavors at that point?
Well, I was already so we were up in Brisbane, so we'd kind of left the farm and moved to kind of the city. We were out in the suburbs still, but but Mom, having 7 kids, she was a cook and then became a caterer and actually started her own business.
Oh, cool.
And so if we weren't on the farm, from the time I was like 8, 9, 10, sometime around then, Mom started her catering business. And so it's all hands on deck in a family business like that. Yeah. So
what kind of stuff was she making?
So so it was like catering for weddings and stuff like that. Okay. So she would do like whole events. She'd do all the service for it and like really just like home cooking kind of stuff. Yeah. But like if you were sitting down and watching the football, you peeled spuds while you did it because mom had an event the next day.
Everybody's prepping.
Yeah, exactly right. And then you'd go and help in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And then once you got to a certain age and you could carry a couple of plates, then you'd go help on the floor. So from the time I was like 12, 13, I was like working events, doing catering and events. And so
it's not a coincidence.
No, not a coincidence at all. And then you get paid disturbingly well to be a bartender in Australia.
Really?
Like it's obscene.
Why?
Like,
do you think?
It's a government regulated kind of like it's an award wage. So you must get paid this much.
So it's a revered profession.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily a revered profession, but at some point in time, it's almost like being unionized, but like the entire industry just has one standard.
Wow.
So it's kind of your starting wage is $17 Australian.
Really?
Yeah. But the last bar I worked in, like it was a fantastic bar in Sydney, cocktail bar, but it was just like they just started you on $23 an hour.
And tipping too?
Tips exist, but it more sits around the 10% mark. But that's still
that's good.
Yeah,
that's a good wage.
Like, you get paid really well to be a bartender in Australia. So I was
pretty attractive. Then.
Yeah, I was in high school working in a butcher's. And because of my farm upbringing, I knew how to kind of do all that kind of stuff, and was really sick of smelling like dead animal.
Understood,
yeah. And the moment I turned 18, legal drinking age, I could get a job in a bar, and so that was it. And but my grandfather, I'm a third generation bartender.
Really?
My grandfather was a publican, owned pubs for 25 years, and he hired my father, and that's how my mother and my father met. So,
really? Your dad's father-in-law.
Yep. Yeah. So my mom's dad hired my father, and then that's how mom and dad actually met.
Was she working for her dad at the pub?
No, she wasn't, but she used to obviously pop
in,
and then she worked in the chemist, and dad used to go in, and that was it. So it was kind of so when I started, the thing as it goes is that mom turned around and she was like, well, if you're going to spend every weekend in a bar, you may as well get paid for it.
Yeah.
So
brilliant idea.
She likes to speak in idioms a lot. So it's
she had a book coming out or anything?
Yeah, well, she should actually. She's a pretty awesome woman. So
18, legal drinking age, you moved out of the house too?
No, still stayed at home. And then, and it was very much, it was that typical thing of like, oh, this is just something I'm doing while I'm figuring out what I want to do in life.
Transitional period.
Even with mom as well. And mom, even a long time after I was doing it full time, it took a lot longer for her, I think, to really see what I was trying to do with it all.
But she's still doing the catering too?
Still doing the catering.
So there's some financial viability to it.
Oh, absolutely. You know? Oh, and she's a workhorse. I think I get my work ethic from her 100%. Yeah. She's coming up. She's in the middle 60s range. She wouldn't like me saying her exact age, but she's still working full-time running her own business that takes care of 120 properties as a property manager, and then her catering business still tackles like 400 people a week.
That's amazing. But that's what keeps that's the thing with my dad. He's going to be turning 70 this year.
Oh wow, right.
And he's like he's a VP level. And he has to do it. It's what keeps him thriving, keeps his mental acuity.
And I can't see myself being any different whatsoever.
For sure. That's another common thread. If I can work, I'm working.
Definitely.
Thinking,
I think
creating all
that notion of kind of retirement or even relaxing. Don't get me wrong, it sounds nice to do for very short periods.
Sure.
But
give me a long weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe a week. Even after 10 days, I was like, dude, I got to get back to
How long were you traveling when you were in London?
When we were doing London, because we had come off of Cork. So it was about 10 days. And that was, but luckily with the Cork part, that was kind of intermingled with work.
Okay.
So it wasn't all, but London was only about 4 days. 4 days. So, but that's about as much as I can take, because, you know how it is. Like you're working in and you're working on the business all the time. It's hard to step away from.
And I think it's very much indicative of this new approach, the modern approach to a work ethic, which is that it's less 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and it is more about being adaptable, and it is more about it's okay to sit down and do half an hour of emails on a Sunday. Yeah, because it's fine.
Because you may not be going in at 9. It's not a 9. You're totally right, and that's the thing that I like about it is. Maybe it's 10 to 4, and then I got 3 hours I'm working at 10 o'clock at night, right? Just because you as the business needs surface.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, that's certainly how Ryan and I justify it to a certain point as well. Like there are a few people that tell us to take more time off, and we should probably do that at some point. But we know that it's okay to it's okay to work and really just kind of work through and turn around at the end of 14 days and be like, oh, I haven't had a day off yet. But because we know that this industry affords us a lot of benefits as well.
It certainly does. Which makes it not the same as like a desk job. It's a little bit easier mentally.
Nothing, and particularly within our company as well, between everything that we're trying to tackle, it's so multifaceted that we go from dealing with like rotors and making sure all the staff are happy within both the bars to then our consultancy company that literally looks at future trends, and that's all we look at almost entirely with that. And so then it's like trying to draft together a 48-page report on what the next 6 months of drinking trends might look like to then we tackle all different kinds of stuff.
That's so brilliant. But so there is no, you're at a different, your scope's slightly larger, I'd say, than a lot of other people, because you guys are doing a lot of different things.
We're looking for where those kind of gaps exist to really kind of plug that gap and push forward and create something new and interesting with it all. So yeah, there is that aspect to it, but we've always said that we're an industry-based business that is consumer-facing.
Yeah,
we there's enough people working within the bar world doing fantastic things, but I think we spend a little too much time almost chasing each other's tail.
Sure.
Almost kind of obsessing about whether or not you're winning that award over this bar or blah, blah, or whatever else.
It's not about us.
Exactly.
It's about the consumer. It's about our customers.
They're the ones that you need 7 nights a week.
That's right.
And as much as that, we also want to kind of help lead that change. That's our biggest thing, is we want to get the consumer drinking better.
Yeah.
Bartenders know how to drink really well.
Sure.
Not every bartender makes the best drink in the world, blah, 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 whatever else. But as a culture and as an industry,
they're the most equipped.
We're really, and we're doing some fantastic work. Don't get me wrong, Ryan and I still have a big focus on re-education and everything, and really reinvesting in the industry, but we've got enough people that are kind of taking care of bartenders. We want to now kind of grab that information and get it out there to the consumer wherever possible.
Activate.
In all honesty, there's a little aspect of it where it's kind of like trying to make it commercially viable and commercially successful. Which kind of, we've had some successes at, we've had some failures at. It's been all right. I mean, it's only been 2.5 years.
Yeah, and that's not enough. I mean, you gotta. It will continue to change. Obviously, the trends. I don't know how different the trends are in the UK than they are here. Slightly different in the categories.
They're different, but at the same time, I think it's 2016. Between the internet and everything else, everybody knows what everyone else is up to.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of like there isn't the time that it takes for information to distill down from different countries.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, there is no time.
If anything, that's been evidenced, we feel, by the fact that you're seeing the likes of London and New York. Maybe they're not as on top as they once were, because there's some fantastic satellite cities with fantastic bars that are able to really be on that world-class standard. And not to say that those cities haven't always had world-class standard bars, but now they've got the opportunity to really be out there and be heard.
Because it's now... absolutely, because someone will share something like Singapore's got an amazing cocktail scene.
Absolutely.
I would have never known.
Right.
But now I know, because the internet's flattened the whole thing out.
Singapore Cocktail Week starts tomorrow.
No shit.
Yeah, that's the second year that they've been holding it.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's fantastic to see. And they've got the likes of everybody from UK, America, Australia, all flying in to kind of hit it up and party for a week.
Some of the best cocktails I've ever had.
I mean, even the 50 best last year. Rankings are what they are. They are susceptible to the people that actually vote on them and blah, blah, blah. So you can't, I don't think you can ever take them as the hard and fast who is the best.
No.
But
it's not a hard indicator, though. I mean, it's a good suggestion.
But when you see the likes of Imperial Bar in Tel Aviv and the Clumsies in Athens, like making it inside the top 50, you kind of got to turn around and be like, and like Ruby in Copenhagen, like all these cities that have got fantastic cultures in their own right, but are being able to kind of step up there and really be heard on that kind of stage.
It's brilliant.
It is. It's brilliant, and it's kind of evidence to the fact that I don't think it is about London or New York anymore. And in turn, I think trends are a lot more fluid on an international level as opposed to a national level. Definitely.
I think so too. I think you're right, because even in the States, if you look at something like Alabama. Right?
Yep.
Like some of these states, even there's cocktail cultures kind of percolating up from even these kind of towns.
Yep.
Like we're like, do they have highways there? We don't even. It seems like so in the dark ages of that stuff. But somehow right now, and food and drink is the first sign of advanced culture.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And that's kind of what's beginning to happen with a lot of these kinds of states. But so you're in Brisbane. You're 18. You're doing this thing. You got a background in flavors. How does this coalesce into you becoming a business owner and someone that even wants to own a business?
I have no idea. It's still very much something like, from when Ryan and I kind of first started, it was like, even then it was like, all right, like, you want to do something together? Yeah, cool, all right. Like, and we sat down, and even at that point in time, I'm not sure. I think I'm very, very lucky, and Ryan and I have both said it. We consider ourselves very lucky to have even met each other to be able to create the way that we do. When we first caught up, I was just leaving Edinburgh, and we sat down and we were going to do a pop-up together. And Ryan had a few other things on the run, but in all honesty, I was thinking about leaving bartending. I had a repetitive stress injury in my arms. This is like 2013.
What was the injury from?
Essentially too much high volume cocktail bars, shaking.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they burn out and like they hurt really bad. They hurt so bad it was difficult to stay on top during sex. Okay. Like it's wow. Like it was like one of those constant pains that was there.
How is it now?
It's better? Good now because we did White Lyan and there's no shaking involved.
Holy shit! So this, I gotta say this, a product of necessity,
right? Exactly.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But sheer coincidence that it even came about like that. We caught up and he had told me his top line thoughts about what he thought White Lyan could be and that he was looking for a site. And I was like, okay, cool. I mean, that all sounds really interesting, but I was kind of 1 foot out the door. But we were going to do this pop-up. We were just going to do whiskey and sherry, our two favorite things. Yeah. Take over this friend's basement at this fantastic Galician restaurant up in North London. And we were just going to do it for a weekend, just for shits and giggles, essentially. Right. And we sat down to write the menu for that pop-up. And we wrote the menu for the pop-up. We wrote the first draft menu for White Lyan. And we went over the pitch for Dandelyan. And like 4.5 hours later, all that was just there in front of us.
How does that... So one, how did you meet Ryan, who's become your soulmate in a way, right?
Yeah. Ryan used to work at Bramble. Okay. And which was the bar that I was running in Edinburgh, which has got a very, very strong. It's the heart of the Mr. Lyan company. We both consider it one of the best bars in the world, one of the best bars that we were lucky enough to work at. Yeah. The reason that we kind of met each other, and as well, a lot of our staff have actually come through their doors as well. Right? Yeah. So Robin is our ops manager, and Robin and I actually knew each other from Melbourne, and then we're working together in Edinburgh at the same time. Okay. We've got like such a tightly interlinking story to the fact where I actually knew Ryan's cousin 2 years before I even knew who Ryan was or anything. I used to serve him. Johan used to drink at my bar in Melbourne when I worked at Black Pearl, and then he moved to Sydney the same time as me. Sheer coincidence. He pops up and he starts drinking at Eau-de-Vie in Sydney when I'm working there. And on my last night in Eau-de-Vie, he tells me when I go to the UK, because I'm leaving Sydney to go move to the UK, when I go to the UK, I've got to look up his cousin. And Johan puts away a few more drinks, and he, like when people keep telling you the same thing over the bar.
Yeah.
Johan keeps telling me this, and like I'm kind of at the end of my rope with Johan at this point in time. And I'm like, Johan, in all honesty, I don't need your fucking cousin. I'll make my own way in life. Blah blah blah. Turns out his cousin's Ryan, and he was
a matchmaker, and he didn't even know it.
So we're super intertwined all the way through.
What is it the kind of when you first glanced upon each other's eyes? Like, what makes it work?
I think it works because we have respect for each other, both personally and creatively, and we're both wild pragmatists, so we don't get offended. So we can just turn around and go, that's a shit idea, don't do that. And we'll take on each other's opinion, but if we still think it's a good idea, we'll still keep pushing forward with it. Yeah. And so there's been things that we've argued about for probably, not argued, I still to this day don't think we've ever even had reason to raise our voices at each other. Exactly right. Yeah. And the creative process, I can't really put my finger on, but we're able to do it at some pace, to say the least.
Does he keep you going faster and you keep him like it's a good volley?
Oh, absolutely. Like we can turn around and we might have even done this once or twice. We know that we might have double booked our schedule and we've got so much on that we're not going to have a chance to write the presentation until 2 hours before we go on stage. Oh, man. We're not worried about that because we know we can just turn around in 90 minutes before and go bang and still drop it. Now we're trying to get more organized and be a little less haphazard. But we've just kind of, there's a strong spontaneity, and it always comes back down to respect, where we really know that we have an immense amount of respect for each other, and so we can constantly push forward and we can challenge each other in a manner where the other one's not going to get offended. Yeah. And
how old is Ryan?
Ryan is 31.
So a little bit older.
32 next month. Yeah. But it's kind of, it's just been one of those ones from the beginning where I'm not sure, still don't know what it is, but we've been able to create on volume.
Well, sometimes it just works like that. Right. You made a creative partner. Yeah. Basically, you guys could start a band.
Yeah.
You do too. I guess White Stripes, maybe.
Yeah.
You'd seem like maybe you're playing drums.
Yeah, I'll definitely.
That's no offense.
No. He's I mean, the company's Mr. Lyan. He is Mr. Lyan. It was kind of.
Where does that whole thing come from?
That is a childhood nickname.
Okay.
So just when he couldn't say his own name, and then when he was a bartender in London and wanted to go out on his own, his our business partner and his sister Natasha, she does branding for a living. She's brilliant at it. She does brand innovation stuff for the likes like Google and people, Barclays, which is one of the big banks. Like amazing stuff. She turned around and she's been she is our creative director. And way before it was even a company, she just turned around to Ryan and like gave him some tips and pointers as to kind of how he should shape his own kind of personality within the industry. And so he was Mr. Lyan, and then the company became Mr. Lyan. And but he's the face of it. He's the driving force. Creatively, I still think to this day, kind of 2.5 years, coming up on 3 years, there's been nothing that both of us haven't touched on.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so
like
full collaboration.
Full collaboration in every manner.
Is one of you guys getting more press than the other?
Oh, Ryan, for sure. Ryan, yeah, but I mean...
Did he have a book, too?
He's got a book. Yeah. He's got a book. We got the retail line that we sell. Like, we've kind of... And it's one of these ones where, the company is his, and then my kind of role and what I actually enjoy doing is it started off, I used to describe it as operations, but I don't think that's really so much fair to say what it is anymore. What I really enjoy is actually getting the brand out there and kind of negotiating the deals and making the events and making shit happen.
Yeah.
And then with the likes of Robin Honhold, Robin's brilliant. And then I more kind of like sell the company, sell the business, and then Robin's the one that really makes shit happen. Because I suck at spreadsheets, something fierce. Whereas he,
it could be the farming upbringing, right? Like, did you guys have a computer?
Yeah.
No offense.
You joke about that, but I think about my early childhood, and there was not a lot of computer stuff involved with it whatsoever. Yeah. But it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of we're there's three of us, and now Robin has just as much say in every aspect of the business creatively, and then we kind of and together we really just try and figure out what we can do. And then Robin's been an amazing driving force behind White Lyan. I think it's been one of the biggest challenges of moving at the rate we're moving. We're now at 2 bars, a retail line, a book, and a consultancy company at 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's a whole lot.
Yeah. So we've moved pretty quickly on it all, and one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest internal fears has been looking at that next project when you're not 100% happy with that with that previous project.
Right.
And accepting 2 parts to it all. One, that you've got to have faith in the people you're leaving in control of that project, that they're going to do a brilliant job at it. And 2, understanding that it's never going to be 100% perfect.
No, it's about juggling. It's going to go ebb and flow.
Yeah.
White Lyan's doing great. Maybe the other project's not doing as great.
Absolutely.
But that's how life is.
And we've had ebb and flow across all of it, across the venues, across... Probably the only thing we don't seem to have had ebb and flow on has been the book. That's already on its 4th print, and it only came out. It only came out October 1st last year.
Jesus, 4th printing already.
Yeah. Wow. It's ridiculous. It's
all full nudes of you in rugby gear.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I didn't read much about it, but I suspect that's what it is.
Yeah. That's been the strong selling focus of it all. But no, it's kind of. It got picked up here in America fantastically. Urban Outfitters and Anthropology took it.
Fucking serious.
Yeah.
Great.
We turned around and they were like, "So the first print's already sold." And we're like, "It's not available yet." They're like, "Yeah, Urban Outfitters America has taken it." We're like, "Cool." All right, and I guess we probably should print another round. And they're like, yeah. So the book's been doing brilliantly, which is great. Like, in between everything else that we've done, Ryan somehow found time to write a book.
Yeah.
And it was just it's just one of those ones where you turn around, he's like, "Oh, so I'm doing the book." And I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "Can I help at all?" He's like, "No, I've just got to find time to sit down and write a lot of copy." And I'm like, "Sure. When do you plan on doing that?" But he did. And it's brilliant. Again, it really embodies what the business model is, because it's taking all that knowledge we have, and we've quite openly said, as much as it might be damaging to sales, we're like, if you are a bartender, don't bother buying this book.
Yeah.
If you are a bartender and you want to give it to your mother, buy the book.
Yeah.
But it is again, it's about taking our knowledge as bartenders and putting it into a language and a text that the consumer can understand.
Yeah, for the common man, right?
It's just about, and Ryan had that brilliant notion to create the book, so it's about drinking at home.
Yeah.
But the kind of the advent of the home bar is not what it used to be.
Sure.
now people drink at home for occasions. And so that's how the book's broken down. It's like the pre-party, the after-party, the dinner, the Sunday brunch.
Yeah.
And it's all about kind of tackling those kind of ones with it. But again, it was, I love the book. I still haven't even read it cover to cover. I fucking hate cocktail books. They're boring as hell, and I do not like. I still haven't.
What do you need to read it for anyhow? You know,
it just kind of, even still to this day, I'm yet to actually read one cocktail book cover to cover. But
it's in a sense, it's like, well, I'm going to read a book about songwriting.
Right.
Just write the fucking songs.
Exactly.
If it doesn't come to you, then don't do it.
Yeah.
But if it does, do it.
I think, like, I've obviously spent the last 24 hours with Jay Cosmos getting ready for the event today, and Jay said it brilliantly today in a manner which I've always believed in but never been able to put words to it, which is that I learn in my own manner, and as such, I learn as and when I want to. I don't need the structure of being told, sit down right now and learn this. Like, I will learn as and when I need to. And it's a really nice way of expressing it all, that I thought for a long time it was strange to not want to sit down and just read all these cocktail books, because I didn't, because they're boring as shit. But in actual fact, it was just that at that point in time, I really never needed to.
Yeah.
And now I find myself, okay, I'm picking up this book at this point in time, and that's because I need to for right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely thing. I mean, I think about it, and it's like, you're not physically scrappy, but you're mentally, you're going to just get shit. You're a pragmatist.
Yep.
You're going to learn, and you're going to, the stuff in the White Lion menu, there's no book that could have given you that.
I got kicked out of science when I was 15 years old, and it was because I knew no application for it. And now all I spend my time doing is trying to understand all this stuff.
Right.
I spend so much time now going like,
it's like rogue science.
Yeah,
but for a great purpose.
But there's so much of it now that I'm learning that I'm like, I could have learned this when I was 15 years old, but I just didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
But now.
But that's it. But it's like love, right?
Yeah.
If you're not ready for it, don't fucking beat it. Don't try to make it happen.
That's a fair analogy. You know? I like that. Yeah, it's you're not going to be able to. Yeah,
you'll just fuck it up, and then there's people will be heartbroken.
Yeah.
So in a science lab, maybe you burn somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Quite literally, actually. I was horrible at that shit. I hated it. But yeah, now we spend so much of our time. Kind of, I guess we describe it. Ryan has a lot more of a foundation and a much greater understanding of, I guess, the scientific process.
Right.
But yeah, now we spend a huge amount of time kind of trialing and quite frequently erroring and to kind of figure out how we can kind of create what we do. But you're right, for something like White Lion, there is no handbook, there is no nothing.
Like, all right, so we're gonna talk about
let's get into it. Yeah.
So when did it start? When did White Lion get founded?
So Ryan had the idea for White Lion up to 2 years before we opened our doors, which was September 26, 2013.
Okay, so pretty recent.
Yeah. Very recent.
Are running on almost up to 3 years here in a few months.
Indeed.
Which is good.
Yeah. So 2013? Yeah, 2013. So, but Ryan kind of had that first idea, he said, kind of almost 2 years before then, and kind of had been workshopping it in different manners. But if you were
to, at that point, what would be the elevator pitch? Like, what would he have described it?
It was born... how it even came up that him and I were talking about it was that we shared this frustration, and I brought it up, and he was like, exactly. He's like, in fact, the entire idea that I've got for this bar is born of this same idea, and that is really sick of bartenders writing these think pieces about how the customer comes first and blah, 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 and yet when you go into the bar, nobody was doing anything to disrupt the actual setting of a bar. Yeah. They were saying the customer comes first. Batching is important because drinks need to go out faster. Stop talking about your unicorn tier filled bourbon and just serve the damn drink already.
Right.
But then when you went into the actual bar, the layout of the bar was the same. The mental approach to how you serve somebody was the same. The mental approach to how you prepare a cocktail largely was the same, with the exception of batching, which obviously became a much more common practice. But nobody was really doing anything to change it all. It was realistically a whole bunch of bartenders getting on their internet soapbox.
And then talking, but not walking the walk.
Exactly. But then turning around 5 nights a week, rolling back into the bar and just doing the same old thing. Yeah. And thinking that their own mental approach to this was going to really change the game.
Sure.
It wasn't. It was never.
You got to reinvent the wheel in a sense.
And more than anything as well, human condition means that you revert back to what you know. So sure, you might take that mental approach into your shift, but are you still thinking that way at midnight when maybe you've had a couple of shots and then you fall deep at the bar? You just start reverting back to what you know.
Totally right.
Yeah, which is human condition. You can't fault anybody for that.
No.
So White Lion was born out of really wanting to change the way people thought about cocktails. And most importantly, the way a consumer got their drink. Mm-hmm. So it started with batching. it was something Ryan had really championed and Ryan really believed in, and it was something that I cared massively about. And then from there, he started to look at what else could be done as far as batching goes.
Yeah.
And so he had the idea of removing ice from it. Okay. So pre-diluting, pre-chilling, and really kind of running with it as kind of... So if you remove that need to shake or stir, and you've pre-diluted and you've pre-chilled it, and you've controlled that dilution to the perfect rate, then you just serve the drink.
Sure. So
you pour it like a glass of wine. And it was around that time, I think, in the ideation of it all, that him and I first met and started chatting about White Lyan. Because I can still remember very early doors, we were discussing things like doing compact, fresh citrus peel that was frozen and using that as a temperature control unit in there. So we were still considering the notion of using fresh products in there.
Sure. But to do something that you already were doing with the batching.
Yeah. But somewhere along the line, it just came about that was like, nope, fuck it, no perishables. That's it. Wow. So there's no ice, there's no citrus, there's no egg white, but we can still do a sour. One of our highest selling drinks is a gin sour with raspberry. You can't see it because I'm talking, but we use a lot of air quotes in what we do because very early on we turned around and we Ryan, I can't even remember what drink it was, but we served this drink and it was, let's say it was like a Negroni, but someone turned around like, that's not a fucking Negroni. I'm like, yes, it is. And they're like, no, it's not. We're like, what? Pray tell, why is it not? Why is it not a Negroni? And it was like, because it doesn't have ice and it doesn't have orange in it, and it's not equal parts, and it's blah 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 blah, and it doesn't even have Campari. And we're like, no, well, we've made our own Italian bitters.
Yeah.
If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, well, like you try this drink, it looks like a Negroni, maybe not a classic Negroni, and it sure as hell tastes like a Negroni. So we kind of got sick of everybody always kind of going back to us and going like, well, that's not really that. So we use a lot of air quotations. Even on the menu, we like when we use lime, it's lime in quotation marks because it's
like citric acid, right?
Well, to approach something like citrus in a concept like White Lyan, we do it in a number of different ways. But in the core base of it, we use a distilled Rotavap distilled lime.
Okay.
We also work with. We're quite fortunate to work with some of the bigger flavor houses around the world, and so we use different kind of limes that they send us, which are often very high potent strength lime distillates or CO2 extractions of lime. Okay. And then we use a whole bunch of different acidulants, so citric acid, malic acid, tartaric acid, acid phosphate, and essentially what we do is we create lime, but we kind of do it with about 8 or 9 different bottles in front of us and a little set of drug scales, and then balance and check, and then test the pH, and then test it in the cocktail and turn back around and go, okay, I think that's lime.
So it's like, in a way, it's like graphing out the metrics of
Very much so, yeah. But then once we turn around and we've decided, okay, this is our daiquiri lime.
Yeah.
And we'll have a different lime that might go into, we'll have different limes that will go into different drinks. It's not just we created lime and that's it.
Right.
So, but our daiquiri lime, once we've turned around and done that, we'll just turn around and make 5 liters of it. And then next time we need to use lime, we can just pick it up off the shelf. It's shelf stable, fully favored, fully acidic, and ready to rock and roll.
It's an amazing thing. Was there, and I don't know if this was intentional as well. I get the function piece about shaking and stuff, especially given you were having an injury with your arm. But it's brand agnostic. That's the thing I love about White Lyan. And I don't know if that was intentional, but I use that word and I mentioned it, White Lyan specifically in a couple of these interviews. Yeah. It is brand agnostic. Because it doesn't matter. It's about the flavors, and that's what you guys are. It's not about the peel or the citrus. It's about the flavor.
And that was, again, about kind of challenging the consumer experience of what a bar could be. Because, I mean, White Lyan looks like a strip club from the outside. It looks like an 80s cocaine den on the inside.
Sure, I was waiting for Motley Crue to show up.
Yeah, exactly. Like the venue is so monochrome, even the drinks are minimalist. Yeah, like, there's no garnishes, there's no flair going on. And then it was like, and I think that notion of being brand agnostic was more born of Ryan's and my want to kind of push the boundaries a little bit more. Yeah. Like, almost like, so if you walk into a bar and the billions of pounds that are spent every year on advertising to tell you to drink Johnny Walker, if they are suddenly removed from the equation.
In a way, they're emasculated as they walk. Those brands are emasculated.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. How do you then decide what you're going to drink? If you can walk in and stare at a back bar of bottles, and instead you're greeted with these 2 opaque fridges with a whole bunch of colorful bottles and labels that look like a retarded 3-year-old drew them on there.
Caribbean.
Like, yeah, right, yeah. It's like, what do you then decide to drink? And what you do, and what happens every time, is you actually talk to the bartender. And straight away, it changes the dialogue about it all, because we can give you a menu, and we give everyone a menu straight off the bat. We give you the spiel about how we do things, and then we start a conversation. And it's a different conversation than what you get to have in any other bar.
I think
and it's brilliant. We're incredibly proud of it. We really, really enjoy it. It's not for everybody, and we're okay with that fact.
Yeah.
Like, we've had some people that have been like, oh, I haven't really enjoyed it, and kind of like, you know, give that filled up face like, I'm sorry, but it just wasn't for me. And we're like, it's okay. Like, it's not meant to be for everybody.
Yeah,
like,
but that's good that you guys are creating something that does put someone on the fence.
Yep.
Either they're going to like you or they're not going to like you.
Very much
But they
so.
have to make that decision. There's no walking out of that bar. So they're like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
No, that is not. That is never
Yeah.
the conversation. Either you walk out of there, as I did, Lydia and I was like, this changed my whole perspective on service. It changed my whole perspective on cocktails. And I have been ecstatic to talk about it since I got back from London. Man.
Yeah, we're like I said, we're very proud of it. But more than anything, we're proud of the fact that despite, and this is certainly what I always try and say to guests, is like, you give that intro spiel and you give that introduction to White Lyan as it is, and then at the end of it, get to turn around and be like, and that all sounds really fucking nerdy, but the idea is that you can just get a really great drink really quickly and party and relax.
Yeah.
And so you could walk into White Lyan on a Saturday night, 4 deep at the bar, the basement's open. The basement has a stripper pole. You can put your hands on the ceiling, and one of the loudest sound systems I've heard in this place.
Yeah.
And you can come upstairs, and it's absolute chaos and pandemonium. Or you can rock in there on a Tuesday and sit down at the bar, and what we know is that you'll still get the exact same cocktail.
Yep.
You'll still get the same level of service. There'll be a different atmosphere, but
Sure.
that's up for you to, as the consumer, as the guest, and then decide whether or not you choose to engage with that or not.
Right.
And then, but everything else around there, it's kind of, we know that we've put our best foot forward when we open the door at 5 o'clock every day.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a wonderful,
Yeah.
life-changing, man. And I don't exaggerate that much. You know, I'll say stupid jokes and shit, but that was a life-changing experience. So because you and I are going to head back down into
Absolutely.
the madness of South by Southwest
Yeah,
in
indeed.
a second. So let's talk about the bourbon real quick, because
Of course.
you know, you're
Yeah.
in from London. You picked the same bottle, oddly enough, that Jay Cosby's picked.
I know that Jay and I are kindred spirits. I got a lot of love for that man. I think the whole 86 Go family are like my long lost family.
It
So
totally is. And so this is the Elijah Krug 18-year single barrel. This is, I think, 45, 46?
Yeah,
maybe.
what do we got on there? 45. Yeah.
This was distilled in 83, so this would be bottled in 91, 92. Tastes different. It tastes different than this stuff now.
Just goddamn delicious.
It's good, right?
Yeah. It's really, really good.
It's really lovely stuff. Well, I mean, fuck, man. You came out.
I heard about how yours and Jay's podcast went, and I was saying to you, I was coming to this with some level of trepidation and fear, because I've still got to go stand up and present to 150 people today.
It's never the intent to like get fucking blasted, you know.
Hopefully I can be back here again in Austin sometime, and we'll do another one where we can
I would
really,
love to.
Yeah.
We can get into a little bit more of it.
I can bring a little bit of the Mr. Lime product along, maybe, and we can get stuck into that. Yeah,
that rye that you guys had was brilliant.
Yeah, that rye is damn good, and those bottle cocktails, they're getting better and better all the time as well. So it's,
you'll have to bring some more stuff.
Indeed.
So how did you get hooked up with the guys from the 86 company?
So I still don't exactly know how, actually, because someone asked this question of me the other day.
Okay, Cupid.
Exactly. No, it would start with Dan Warner, who is the European 86 co-ambassador. And Dan came into the White Lyan a couple of times, and Ryan didn't even introduce us, and which he's horrible at most of the time anyway. And then Dan left one time, and I'm like, oh, who is that guy? And I'm really, really bad as far as being aware of the larger industry, like really bad. Like living in Scotland in 2012, moving down to London in 2013. I remember I went on one of my first booze trips within the UK, got really drunk with this guy, hanging out with him. He was loads of fun. He came into Bramble, he partied. I rocked back down into London, and went to the Artesian. I walked by the bar. I'm like, oh, yeah, that guy. And Ryan's like, you mean Alex Cretenia? And I'm like, oh, is that who that is? Like, I'm horribly like.
But that's good, because everybody is it's just you're humble, right? Like everybody's cool.
Just kind of like I approach everybody with that manner, and so I had no idea who Dan was, but Dan is a legend in his own right. He's a brilliant human being, and then Dan came back in, and he kind of 86 Co was just kicking off in the UK. He just brought in a bit of the stuff. We had a chat about it all. And he was chatting about the story behind the 86 Co and the way it was approaching. And again, it was that whole born of industry knowledge to create a consumer product.
Right.
And I just really liked Dan and kind of got hanging out with him. And then I met Simon when he was in White Lyan one time, and then we always kept trying to find a way to work together. And then White Lyan has a huge sustainability focus. I think we've reduced waste on an average kind of bar of White Lyan size by about 80%.
That's incredible.
Yeah, like we struggle to fill residential size garbage bins with the produce from White Lyan, because we reuse bottles and blah 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 and all of that. So Dan and I had a chat about putting together, and Ryan, a presentation for a tales seminar. We put it all together, we submitted it, and it didn't get approved. Which obviously goes to show how far Simon's influence reaches. No, I joke. But Simon turned around, having seen the presentation, and really loved it, and he was going to be over, this was start of last year, and he was just like, hey, I really like the talk. It's a bummer it didn't get accepted. Why don't, when I'm over, I've got to go do some work in Paris. Why don't you come to Paris and we'll do it there? And we and that was the first time we really got to hang out. But we did it, and it went down really well. Simon really enjoyed it. And at the same time, Simon talked more about the ethos of the 86 Co company. And it was the first time I heard him talk about that. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that as well. Simon's a fantastic presenter. He's got a great charm about him when he does talk. But when he talked about the entire company and where it was born from and its history and its story in a very transparent and honest manner, I really enjoyed it. And it just struck a chord with me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very common thread.
Very much so. So then we got Dushan and Simon over later that year for Imbibe. And Ryan, Dushan, Simon and I did a talk. And that kind of, we just did a little 1 hour chat at Imbibe and could just kind of see we had a real mutual respect again and a real belief in each other's companies. And then it really kind of, I think last year I did still to this day, I think it's probably one of the best trips I've ever done, where we did 86 Co, Ford's Gin did their green glass bottles.
Right, yeah.
And they decided that talk I did in Paris to bring that back up, and we were going to do 5 cities in 10 days.
Yeah.
No small feat.
Yeah.
And so we did Austin, Dallas, Chicago, LA, New York in 10 days, 11 days. I took an extra day in Chicago. But during the course of that, I got to hang out with all the ambassadors that work in all their different regions. Excuse me. I got to spend the whole time with Sharon Bronstein, who runs all their marketing, and she's amazing. And I got to spend loads of time with Simon and Jay and all the guys and Dushan, and it just kind of, I think so from there,
kindred
it's kind
spirits.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and we get along, and we got a big belief in making a change in the industry via action and not just talking. And like what they do, I mean, I've bashed on about it repeatedly in presentations, but what they do and the amount of effort and time they've sunk into something as simple as what could be perceived as simple as their bottle, but in actual fact, they've really gone that extra level to make it so fantastic. I got a lot of love for the guys. And the juice is damn tasty as well.
And so you're partnering with them again.
Yeah.
You're in town for the South by Southwest thing. We're going to head down there. And that is for Future Fest, right?
Yeah. So we've got Future Fest is... If South by Southwest is very much in the moment, what is cool and happening right now in technology, innovation, and subsequently music, Future Fest is all about what's coming up next. But it takes a very holistic approach to it all. So they did the second Future Fest in March last year, and Ryan and I did a presentation. They always take a couple of different headings. So they had the future of thrill, the future of government, Ryan and I, and a few others. And Ryan and I took the future of thrills, and then obviously alcohol is our medium that we work in. So
very thrilling one. Yeah,
we looked at what the future of alcohol, what the future of intoxication, one of the most thrilling experiences you can get in life is. And so we took a very tongue-in-cheek approach where a future government had realized all the money that the alcohol and hospitality industry contributes to the government coffers, and they'd finally decided to spend that money for good, and they'd made alcohol healthy. Wow. So we presented a presentation as the representatives of the government of 2050 about, are you having your 5 a week? And we created a 5 a week cocktail program that you had to drink on behalf of the government to stay healthy for the good of your country.
God damn it, let's go do that.
And that went down really, really well. I mean, on that bill, there was Vivienne Westwood, Edward Snowden, George Clinton were the 3 headliners.
Holy shit.
So to even like have the Mr. Lion name up there.
Crazy.
Yeah. So Future Fest is happening again in London this year in September. And I'm here to do a little preview of what we're going to do with Ford's Gin for the one in September.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the future of love. And I'm going to argue that robot bartenders are not a thing.
Nope.
They can never be a thing, because what you go to a bar for is a human interaction. your bartender is someone more. Don't get me wrong, a robot could serve you a cocktail,
Sure.
but that's not what you go to a bar for.
No.
You go for the whole experience. And the other big experience that you get in a bar is meeting other people. It's kind of that final frontier of social engagement that I don't think technology will really be ever able to disrupt.
Supplement, yeah.
Yeah, very
Totally.
much so. So by virtue of that fact, when apps have kind of reached their peak and everything else, and you really desire that final level of human interaction to find true love, essentially bartenders are the next generation love doctors.
Yeah.
So I'm going to argue
This is so true.
And I'm going to use a little bit of the... not the science, but I'm going to use a little bit of the research and everything that we put into our drinks at Dandelion as far as looking at natural botanicals and how they can influence mood.
Sure.
And kind of do a couple of aphrodisiac-inspired and at times infused cocktails with it all. So
I just had this immense grin on my face.
It's
amazing.
It's good. I mean, like everything that we do, it's all about being tongue-in-cheek and a little bit of fun, but having that foundation of knowledge and that considered approach to what we do with it all.
So it is, in fact, a scientific possibility.
Yeah,
What would be the point
absolutely.
if it wasn't, right?
Exactly right. And even when we did our other talk about healthy alcohol, that was not to try and jump on the bandwagon of healthy cocktails, because right now you look at the amount of sugar people put in those drinks to make them healthy.
Horrible.
It's a load of shit. But actually looking at how we could make the spirit consumed more healthy. Could we actually put omega-3 fatty acids in there? Could we actually put this in there? Could do amino acids survive the temperature that alcohol generates? So we and then looking at other really healthy products that are out there like vinegars and fermentation processes and how we could manipulate those. White Lyan now ferments its own wine in-house on Hoxton Street that we serve every night. That's amazing. So it's we're doing a lot of work in this field anyway, and we're finding a nightly application for it in our bars. But then I guess when we do something like Future Fest, we get to be a little bit more theoretical about where this...
Which is even crazy for you guys. You guys are already like a step ahead. And you're like, well, let's be ahead of ourselves.
Exactly. Well, that's it.
Which is ahead of everybody at that point, you know?
More, let's look at what 2050 might look like, again, in that consumer landscape.
Yeah.
Fuck what the bartender's doing. What does it mean for the consumer? And does it mean that we might be able to serve an aphrodisiac-enriched cocktail so that when you go to the bar, the final frontier of social engagement, what do you then get? Do you just get that social engagement, or does the bartender go one step further? And do they actually give you a cocktail so that when they introduce you to the person next to you, that might wind up being the love of your life? Can they also serve you something that might further enhance that?
Yeah.
Or do bars are just going to become the last resort of date night? And everything's going to look like a Tinder hookup. But even if it's just going to look like one Tinder hookup after another, you're still going to want a drink that gets you in the right mood, gets your engines firing in the right manner. I mean, I love bars for so many reasons. And I think one of the best reasons is that social engagement, and being able to go out there and meet somebody new and what might happen. And there's
the
fun
thought
to
of
that.
not knowing.
Yeah, there's a fun to that. There's a thrill to that technology and applications and hardware will never be able to replace. Even if AI becomes a thing and robots take over the world,
Still not going to
be able to. You're still not going to be able to upload that emotion and that feeling. That you can't quite put your finger on it, but goddamn if it isn't cool. So there's a little notion of hopeless romanticism thrown in there as well, which
I'm beginning to see this. Iain.
Which I think is necessary as well. You kind of gotta So it should be a lot of fun, definitely. Yeah.
It's rooted in love. I think that's great.
Yeah.
We all can relate to that.
Yeah, that's it. It's got that warm, fuzzy feeling about it that people like. So,
I'm excited to try these cocktails, and we're going to head down there. And
yeah,
a couple
definitely.
batch ones. And, man, I hope you make it back into Austin soon.
I sincerely hope I do. I mean, this is my third time in 9 months. So
odds are looking good for me that you'll be back.
Yeah, the odds are looking good. So I think it helps that Jay Cosmos lives here. I just keep getting deviated via Austin for things.
It surely doesn't hurt.
Yeah, certainly not. But dude, thanks so much for having me.
It's been brilliant chatting, man, and thanks for sharing the bourbon with me.
Not at all.
Let's check this future event out.
Indeed. Let's do it.
Thanks, Iain.
Cheers, man.
Well, there we have it, the amazing, creative, charismatic Australian Iain Griffiths of White Lyan and Dandelyan and so much more. I think that Iain's ability to match flavors, his insight as to how our minds perceive flavors, allow him to make some of the most intricate, some of the most nuanced cocktails that I've ever had, and to be perfectly frank, the experience at White Lyan is something I have never, ever, in any form experienced in my life as a bar goer. So I cannot speak highly enough of White Lyan and Dandelyan, the food. Man, the food at the Mondrian in London is insanely good. But Iain, thank you so much for chatting with me and taking that brief time out to chat during South by Southwest of 2016. Your cocktails were insanely delicious, and it really, really, frankly, bothers me that you have such an amazing, insightful grasp of flavor and execution. Without exaggeration, say I cannot wait to see what happens with White Lyan, with Dandelyan, and with yourself as your career progresses. You're not even fucking 30, man. Come on, come on. So, a great friend of 86 Company as well. So thank you, everybody, for listening to Should Have You with Mike G. And no matter what episode of Mad Men you're rewatching, no matter how much Canadian Club you feel like drinking because Don just drinks that fucking rye whiskey, please keep things